What's up, Nick? I am excited to have you on the show. Been following you on social media. You're involved in so many cool things. I think you boost everyone's testosterone that's following you. So good to have you here, man.
I appreciate that, Joe. Thank you very much for inviting me on. I don't know about being a test booster, but I try to live life as fun as I can. We've got a bunch of stuff going on. I'm busy all the time, and my wife and we get to have some fun. So it's definitely not a bad life that we live. We're very blessed.
Yeah, congratulations. I saw you just got married finally.
Yeah. 14 years together, and we decided 2 weeks before we got married that we were going to get married.
Okay.
It kinda spurred out of, we own this business, we run this business, it eats up a good percentage of our lives, and we're happy to dedicate ourselves to it, but a lot of personal things get put on the back burner.
Yeah.
We had talked months ago about getting married in October, and, it just something came up always, and, I was in South Carolina, we had set up for an event, that was supposed to happen, the day following, Hurricane Helene, when Hurricane Helene hit. So, I woke up that morning, we didn't have power, we had to figure out when we were gonna reschedule the event, and I got back and cell phone service worked, but text messages weren't, and, we got done with everything that we needed to do, got some roads cleared, helped the people out that we could, and got back to our space with all of our volunteers, and I called my wife, and, um, we decided we were gonna do it. We were just gonna let's just do it. Let's figure it out and make it happen, and there were 9 of us at the wedding, including Amanda and I, and, everybody that was there participated in the wedding in some way, contributed to it in some way. We had, an excellent friend who's an amazing photographer out there taking photos. One of our friends was holding the light for the photos. Another one of our friends officiated. We had a like you name it. Everybody was out there doing something cool. So it was very, very awesome. We had a small dinner afterwards with pizza and just celebrated. It was perfect for us and one of the best days that we've had in our 14 years together. So it turned out awesome with no stress. And I think everything that you could ask for in a wedding.
I love that. My wife and I waited 6 years. You beat us. I thought I was a slowpoke. What does that say about yours and Amanda's personalities, or your what does that say about your quirks or your traits or about who you are that you waited so long? Because so much of your lives seem to be about intention, preparation, being very focused and driven and goal oriented. And then it's like you must have intentionally not get married for such a period of time, but then you also intentionally got married at a certain time. So what does that say about you guys?
Yeah, we're unconventional for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, everything about our lives is just, it's different. In our 14 years together, we've lived in 16 different homes. We've lived in, I think it's 7 different states or 8 different states. She followed me around throughout my military service. She followed me around throughout my time in the defense industry. She jumped on board when I decided I was going to sell our house in Florida and move to Texas and start working full time for this organization. And I think it's really more her than me. I'm an adventurer. Like
Yeah.
yeah, I'll throw caution to the wind and just let it ride. And every time I do, and she's there with me, it assures me that I picked the right person or that the right person picked me because I think that's actually what she would say is that she picked me. But yeah, I think it's definitely a testament to who we are. Is like just putting it out there and doing it. We've tried. We talked about getting married for all of our 14 years together, and the first time we were gonna do it, we had a little bit of money saved, and the opportunity came for us to go to a trip over to Europe, and we spent a week in Italy and spent a week in Greece and explored the countries and had one of the coolest experiences in that. Every other time we had talked about getting married and putting money away and saving for it, something else, some other adventure or other opportunity came up, and we just built life experiences instead of having just that day. But when we finally had it, it worked out exactly the way that we wanted to. And, there's so many people that, and I apologize if this was you, but have 150, 200 person weddings. And there's, that aunt twice removed that you don't remember from when you were a
Right.
child that you're just spending $150 on a plate for. Like, we didn't want any of that. We wanted it to be something that was for us instead of for everybody else. And it worked out really well.
I love that. We were living in Florida at the time, actually. Also, where in Florida were you before I go into that story?
So we lived. Our first jaunt in Florida was in Miami in South Beach. I was stationed at a Coast Guard unit down there, and then our second was up in the Panhandle on 30A, in between Destin and Panama City Beach in a city called Rosemary Beach.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're living in, St. Augustine and then,
Oh,
like
beautiful.
like, Atlantic Beach near Jacksonville Beach, but, we did, like, a destination wedding. I'm from New Jersey. What do you got there?
That's
Oh,
the
there you
St.
go.
Augustine Lighthouse.
You do. There you go. Right on. Cool. We were living down there. We escaped the, cold winters of Jersey where I am now, and, it was funny because we had a destination wedding thinking, like, no one's gonna come, just be our closest friends and family, and, like, of course, everyone came. So, turned out to be, like it wasn't a huge wedding, but it was bigger than we thought, and it was awesome. Um, I really wanna hear about before we jump into all the cool stuff you're doing now, I'm, like, really curious what Nick was like as a little kid. What
I
kind of kid? 'Cause I have, like, 3 kids. I have 2 sons, I have a daughter, and I always find it fascinating to, like, watch them participate in their growing up and, like, help be a mentor and have fun with them, and then it's so
Yep.
cool to play the game of, like, what are they gonna be like when they get older, you know? And I start to see their friends, like, they have a couple friends that are, like, overly mature, like, shake my hand, like, "Hello, Mr. Alders, how are you?" I'm like, "You're gonna be a salesman, you're gonna be this guy, you're gonna be that guy." It's pretty big, man.
That's hilarious 'cause I was, I was kind of a lonely kid when I was really young. I grew up in a really rough neighborhood. My mom was a single mom and worked a lot, so I was at home alone by myself. But I love Legos. I love building things. I love Kinects. That was a big thing when we were little. I had a couple games in the computer that I would play that were like mechanically inclined, like engineering things to make the ball get from one side to the other or whatever it might have been. So um, I was definitely a lonely, quiet, shy kid. And then I got a little bit older and I started making friends. And I remember one of my friends' moms called me Eddie Haskell. So I don't know if you remember Leave It to Beaver. Like I was just the biggest kiss ass. And then as soon as the parents went away, I was the one creating the trouble. Um, I don't wanna say I was a tortured kid, but I wasn't great when I was, going through my in between years. I was definitely a chubby little guy when I was little.
Funny.
Oh, husky section
Oh,
all the time.
yeah,
In 4th grade yeah. In 4th grade, was the last year that I could play on the JV football team that was supposed to be from 4th to I think it was 4th, 5th, and 6th, and then there was a 7th and 8th grade team, because there was a 125-pound, weight max that you could weigh to play in the little league. So I had to go up and play with the bigger kids when I was little. Um, I found a passion in skateboarding and skating, and lost a ton of weight. It gave me something to do. And I was skating every single day. And that really helped me find something that I enjoyed doing.
mm.
And through high school, I won't cuss, but I was not a great kid.
You could just go on. I'm a Jersey guy. I hear it all the time. My wife worked
So I was a bit of a prick when I was in high school, and not to other people necessarily. I was definitely like the jokester of the class. I like to have fun and I like to screw around. And C's was the constant for me because I never liked to work hard. I wanted to go and do what I wanted to do. I was in school just to get through school. Um, I excelled in art. I found a real passion in photography that I took as a blow off class my freshman year.
Mhm.
And I went out and I took my first roll of film, and it was like just absolute dog trash. And my teacher told me, and he was really harsh on me. And I immediately was decided I wanted to get better at it. I wanted to do something, and then that became my favorite thing to do. So I excelled through that and won a ton of awards throughout high school. When it came time to put my portfolio together to go to art school for college, I didn't do it. And I just blew off and went and, partied and did the things that I did in high school, and, I lost direction. I did a bunch of stupid things. When I was 19, I joined the military,
Mhm.
and, that changed the trajectory of my life. I'd never accomplished anything really that I'd set my mind to. I never did anything hard. I was just kind of a piece of shit. I mean, like, I wasn't a great kid, and, having when I graduated from boot camp, which was something that I was intending on just going to a recruiter and backing out and not really ever going through with it. I I, uh, I graduated from boot camp and it was like, "Oh my god, I can do things. I
Mhm.
can I can, like, I'm better than what I've thought I've been forever, and that changed me fundamentally. It brought structure to my life. It brought a lot of things that I didn't have when I was younger, that I needed, and it definitely changed the trajectory of where I was going to go. Because if I would have stayed home, I would be dead or in jail. I'm sure of that. And I got out at just the right time, and I had a great experience when I lived in Michigan. I had a ton of amazing friends. I've got some stories that you wouldn't believe if I told them to you. But it was time for me to go. It was time for me to leave and move on. And I've not been back since. I go back to see my family and things like that, but I never moved back home. I've been gone for about 18 years now, 19 years now, and I've been able to explore the country because of it. So definitely been a good. It was a good transition going to the military. 'Cause
It's so interesting hearing people's stories because there's so many, like, stereotypes, you know? Like, you said you're super into art, photography, skateboarding. Most people I'm an artist as well, I don't know if you know that or not, I do art and photography.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, and, people find it super weird that I also love to go to the shooting range with my friends, and I also love to lift weights like a meathead, but I'm
Hey,
also like, I listen to Led Zeppelin, and I'm sort of a hippie, and I eat tofu, like, there's all kinds of weird contradictions going on. I find it cool when other people sort of break the molds. You mentioned skateboarding. I still skateboard with my sons and my daughter, and we surf, and, I wanna know if you what you think about this observation/theory slash theory that I'm gonna float past you. I think
what?
one of the hidden benefits that I've noticed that builds your character being a skater or surfer type of kid is that you learn to be okay with eating shit in the public, right? If you're at a skate park or if you're learning how to surf, especially at the beginning, constantly eating shit in front of everyone that knows you, all your friends and family, looking like a dope. But also, there's something to be said about an entrepreneurial, creative spirit in there because there's no rules. You learn and progress in the way that you want to. You're the one that pushes yourself. There's like motivation in there. There's no coach blowing a whistle, like, "Come on, Nick, do this ollie backside kickflip." You know? Has your experience being that kid, has that been ingrained in you and that you see, coming out in other ways as well?
Um, for sure, in the sense of, like, if you have fear in front of you, um, like, you're not gonna land a trick if you're afraid. If you have hesitation, like, if you need to I remember trying to learn how to kickflip and doing it static instead of trying to learn how to kickflip when actually rolling.
Right, like
Um,
holding a
eh
fence or something?
Exactly, exactly, anything, even just learning how to ollie. You have to remove the fear and understand that, like, "Hey, I'm probably gonna fail at this for a long time, but eventually when I succeed, I worked and I got it." Skating doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. There's very few that get on a skateboard and immediately it just works well for them. But for everybody else, it is exactly that. It's struggle, 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 small victory, new trick, and you start learning something again. That and I did love that, and I think I've always had that spirit in me. I just needed to find a way to get it out. But yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. If there was a sport that I could push my kids towards, it would be skating. Just because of that. Like, it's you out there with you. Individual sports and team sports as well have their place. But for individual sports, I think the idea of you being out there by yourself, failing by yourself, there's nobody else that you can blame. It takes a lot of ownership. And I think that's a great thing to your point.
And there's also the part of it where you do succeed and you do land that trick, let's say, but then it's like, you're like, "Okay, I landed it, now what?" Like, "What am I have to show for it? Nothing's really happening that's in my life any differently." So it's kind
Yeah.
of it kind of like, I guess, transitions towards what you're doing now where it's like you're involved in these games and obviously there's no, consequential thing where, the world is gonna shift, but while you're in that zone, it's all that matters, and you achieve, and you have a mission, and you have a goal, and you achieve it, and then you're like, "Okay, nothing really changed in my life, but it's really fun and it's really cool." And I think that's the part of especially an experience of being a man, we need those things, and I think those things are often belittled. The idea
Yeah.
of being with friends, socialization, the idea of self-motivating, the idea of pushing off gratification, the idea of pursuing something without necessarily a super important reason other than just to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree, and that was, something that I found in fitness before I got into the tactical games. I really, like, was exactly that. Nothing's going to happen if I hit 315 on a bench, but I'm going to feel it. I'm going to find that sense of self fulfillment. I remember when I found CrossFit, and that was really like kind of what kicked this off for me. Um, I was terrible at it, and I was strong, and I was, I could run, I could do these things, but I went into a CrossFit gym and I was getting blown up by 15-year-old girls, and I just couldn't figure out why I was getting beat by these people. And I decided as soon as I went in there the first time. No, I've never heard that either. It just kept on tickling in my ear. I thought it was me.
I was hoping it was you. I'm like, "You're a tactical guy. There's already some kind of, like, military thing happening." I think we're all right, we're recording there, we're recording here. All right, we're good to go. I'll edit that out. Let my balls drop for a second here. Okay. What were we talking about? I don't know. We had a little technical difficulty there for anyone else. I'll cut in here and, we'll pick up from where we left off. But, whatever we were talking about, let's start here. Let's start here. You're talking about CrossFit and, getting beaten by girls and getting stronger. I think that's the tangent we were going on.
Yeah,
Sound
and I
familiar?
think, yeah, exactly. And the tactical games is the same in the regard that nobody's going to get anything out of getting good at this sport right now, right? Like, it is literally just for self-fulfillment. And so rarely as adults do we go out and do something outside, like something that is beneficial to our health and wellness, like going to the gym, like competing in a sport, that doesn't have some kind of monetary gain at the end. We spend so much time and dedicate so much time into work, into things like that, that just like, yeah, it's great that you're making money out of it, but where's the passion in it? Where's the pursuit? Where's the perseverance? Where's pushing yourself? So that's what I've liked and enjoyed the most about the sport and the people inside of it is they're all looking to do something that's not going to gain them anything other than, the self-fulfillment and pushing themselves to something better.
For people listening that have no idea what tactical games are, can you give, like, a brief explanation so people are like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So tactical games is it's a shooting and fitness sport. We do everything that we can to ensure that we bring in as many different modalities of fitness and of shooting into a weekend competition. We put events on all over the country. Starting next year, we'll be expanding into Europe as well. So we have regional events all year, and then it culminates in our national championship, which is a 3-day competition. Our national championship just happened this past weekend. And that's our biggest event of the year. So every one of our events, we typically have about 300 competitors that show up, and they go out there and they push themselves. We have a bunch of different age divisions, a bunch of different divisions based on your physical capabilities. So there's space for everybody. Um, our competitor base is comprised of about 50% law enforcement, military, veterans, and then the other 50% is just civilians that are interested in pushing themselves and learning marksmanship and have an interest in fitness. So again, 2-day competitions. We test in a bunch of different ways, and you can't just be a strong person and come out and win. You can't just be a runner and come out and win. You really have to be multifaceted, both with the shooting and with the fitness.
So, what have you found is the common denominator with this? Because I would have just guessed, and I could be totally wrong. There's a section of people that probably transition from CrossFit. There's probably people that transition from just firearms training, people from the military, like you said, probably jujitsu. What are those the common paths? Are there other ones that people stumble upon this activity?
Yeah, it's a lot of it's also people that have 0 interest in fitness, but maybe they're interested in firearms and they want to get interested in fitness, or they wanna find something to motivate them. I think the common denominator is people that are motivated to go out and do something. It seems like, and I can say this with pretty good certainty, everybody that competes in our sport does something for a living, meaning we have a ton of ER physicians that are competitors in our sport. I don't know why, but surgeons and ER physicians are really attracted to what we're doing. That law enforcement and military demographic, again, people that go out and they've seen the other side of the world. They've seen a side of the world that a lot of people, watching this podcast and a lot of people in America would never have to see. Um, and it's a place for them to come and be with other like-minded people, and like-minded people in that regard is really just people that are wanting to push themselves. I think that there's a common misconception that everybody in the shooting space is like a MAGA hat wearing Trump supporter, waving the flag, when in fact it's not actually that's not it at all. I mean, there are definitely are those people, but just like in America, there are people that are on the far left. We have a competitor. She's like a 56-year-old woman that competes in our sport. Her name's Leslie. Super super staunch liberal, and she did our interview with one of our commentators, and it was funny in that she said, "Once you go far enough left, you get your guns back." And I thought that was like just such a funny thing to say. Um, but that's it. It's filled with so many different kinds of people, different colors, different ethnicities, different religious belief systems. It's everybody. Truly, if you think of the root of the Second Amendment, it's protection of all Americans. And that's what is ingrained in it. And that's a big part of our sport as well. Is people don't care who you voted for. People don't care what church you go to, or if you even go to church. People don't really care about that. They're out there just trying to push themselves, and they're interested in supporting you because you're interested in supporting this obscure sport that we all participate in.
I'm sure there are, like, fringe segments that half of like, a certain segment is, like, actually training in case the other small segment attacks them some.
I've never heard that. So, yeah, I think we have enough federal agents that compete in our sport that are like that. I think any of that would kind of get knocked down. And like, it's funny. It really takes a certain type of person to compete in a sport like ours, because the first thing that happens, you get smacked in the face of the workout, your ego is gone. And I've seen it in so many different people, whether it's guys and women coming from tier one military units or professional athletes, whatever it might be. You come out and you get hit in the face of the workout, and all of a sudden you're just like taken aback, your ego shredded, and now you are who you are, and you bring the best of you to the rest of the weekend. And that's been really really cool to see and really cool to watch. We've had professional athletes come out and say, I expected everybody to be good at shooting. I didn't expect people to be so fit in this sport. And then we've had professional marksmen come out and say the exact same thing. Like, I expected people to be fit. I did not expect people to have this level of proficiency with firearms. So it's very cool to see, and it's a very interesting cross section of people for sure.
It is funny, there is that misconception politically in this weird climate that we live in, but then if you watch the Winter Olympics, there's people on skis that stop and start shooting stuff, so it's kind of silly. You know, this past weekend, I, went shooting with 2 of my old college roommates, on pretty different sides of the spectrum politically. My one college roommate, uh, had this whole Facebook thing going on where he was just kind of, very anti-gun and just the whole stuff, and instead of, engaging in a negative way, I just called him on the phone and say, "Hey, I think there's some misconceptions. What do you say we just go to the range sometime? We'll talk. We'll have a good time as bros." And,
Yeah.
he took me up on it. We had a great time, and you're right, I have friends all across the spectrum that just enjoy it. It's just a cool for me, it's just a cool bro activity. Just like
Yep.
throwing axes or playing pool, you know? It's fun to go bang bang and hit a target, you know?
Yeah. And anything, the thing that I like most about marksmanship and shooting sports is you can always learn something. Like, if you wanna chase it, you can always be learning something, because there's always a new discipline or a new element of shooting to learn. And we try to pull that into our sport. We do action shooting, which would be like moving and shooting. So if you're familiar with, like, USPSA or two-gun or three-gun, these sports all involve multiple weapon systems where you're moving around a course of fire and shooting. We also do bullseye shooting, which is what our traditional tactical game stages are. And in that, we'll incorporate different positions, different yardages. So it becomes, where is your bullet going to impact? Even if you pull a perfect shot, meaning you're on target, um, understanding where your bullet's actually going to impact on that target based on yardage and where your zero is. We do long range and mid range shooting as well. So that's a whole nother discipline of shooting pulled into our sport. And in that, what we're trying to do is increase awareness for the other shooting sports that are out there, because they don't, it's very tough to market in this industry to people outside of this industry. We market inside the industry pretty well, and we're a bit incestuous, and we're stealing competitors from one another, and it's not, that's not great. But getting the word outside of the industry is very difficult because of some of the restrictions that we have, because on social media, because of their policies with firearms. So it's always good to get new eyes on, because I think like 53% of Americans are firearm owners, and I would prefer it if all 53% of those Americans were good firearm owners, meaning they understood how to properly and safely use these firearms. They understood weapon safety and how to explain that to other people and spread the word about it. I think that would break the stigma of what firearms are and how they're used, because that's such a small fraction of a percentage of the actual firearm owners that are in this country. So I think the more that we can do to educate, the better off we're going to be.
I wanna dig in a little bit to the business side of this because I know you've brought a lot of benefit on the business side of this to the tactical games. Before we do that, though, I'm curious if you have found yourselves, as a target of anti-gun legislation or if people listening to this that are like, "Why do you have this gun guy on? I'm not into this. You're evil, blah, blah, blah." Like, what do you say to people like that? Because we have touched upon that we both have friends that are all across the spectrum. It's not just a right
Sure.
wing thing by any stretch, but there are a lot of people that have a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of narratives out there that would make people listening to this unsubscribe and think I'm nuts for having you on. Uh, what are you a target of that sort of narrative and talking, or does that not even come near you?
I honestly, it doesn't even come near me. I don't, I don't know if it's because, when people meet me, they don't assume this is what I do. They don't. I don't know if I don't give off the aura of that, but it's honestly not been something that I've had to deal with. I think people that know me and that have known me for a long time specifically understand that like. I'm contrary to what they believe somebody in the shooting industry might be. Exactly like you said, I listen to Zeppelin. Like, I think I've got, 1 through 4, like, right next to my record player at home. There's you know, I love art. I love our office is filled with art, so when people come in here, that's something that they see. Yeah, I served in the military, but I served in a branch where I wasn't combat deployed. I was in the United States Coast Guard. Our mission was law enforcement, migrant interdiction, drug interdiction. So it was just I had kind of a different non-traditional path. Um, I'm not one to go out there and profess beliefs in something, no matter what it is. I feel like through my travels and through my experiences in life, I'm smart enough to know that you have to leave some room for growth and knowledge gaining throughout experience. So I think because of all of those things, I've never been targeted directly. Um, We've definitely seen things from both sides, from both people on the far left and the far right, um, being upset because we have, people in the LGBTQ community that compete in our sport, and people on the far right, especially like super far removed, don't like that. That's not who we are. People in the tactical games community don't support that. And my response was, "You're not part of the tactical games community if you can't just find a person who's a person. I don't give a shit what they do or who they are. Like, if you want to come out here, you want to be a good competitor, you want to be a good sport, and you want to contribute to this organization. We want to have you." Um, and the same thing on the far left. I think that there's again that misconception that every person that owns a firearm is a gun-toting, conservative that wants to harm people of color, and there's all these terrible misconceptions about it, and that's not at all the case. I come from a mixed family. Like that's another thing that it's kind of hard for people to attack you when like my nephew I brought to the sport is half black and is, like it's just it's there's so many misconceptions and so many things that get misconstrued by so many different people that experience and coming out and actually observing in person changes all of those perceptions. So yeah, I've not been a direct target of those things specifically.
I think those are good things to address. I'm glad you spoke upon that. Getting to the business stuff, I know you brought a lot of value to the company, organization, I guess is a better word. Can you talk about that? Maybe your entry into the tactical games and what you've done. I know you got some huge sponsors like Under Armour. I'd love to hear about those sort of stories. I think the entrepreneurial side of this is super interesting.
Yeah, so I'm actually the third owner of the sport. It was started by a man named Tim, who was a Green Brave veteran. I believe, and I hope I get this number right because I say it all the time, 26 years in the US Army, 23 years in special operations. He started it pretty early. 2019 was really when it started to the first matches happened. Um, 2020 is when I came into the sport. I got introduced to it by a guy that was managing a retail store that I was putting an event on for a nonprofit. He told me about it. I saw the photos of it and I fell in love with it, specifically because of the photography. I felt like the photographer just captured such an incredible side of the sport, the struggle, the success, the just like he made it look cool. Um, so I came in, I bought a rifle and a pistol, and 2 weeks later, I went out and competed in my first competition. I definitely I had a base level of understanding of firearms through my time in the military, but in no way was I excelling at any of those, and I had badges for qualifications in both rifle and pistol, but, I knew minimal amounts about them. Um, I fell in love with it after my first match. I think that year there were 9 competitions around the US. I flew to 7 of them. I would leave work Friday afternoon, fly out, get in at, like, midnight, wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning the next day, and go to early check-in and compete all weekend and fly out Friday night or Monday morning and go back to work on Monday. It was just something that I absolutely fell in love with. During that year, the second owner, whose name is Jared Halbert, he transitioned and took over the company. The company was not doing well financially under the original owner just because he was looking towards growth, but not sustainment. He was always putting money towards the next thing and just was never really focusing on sustaining the company. Jared was definitely an incredible businessman and structured the company in a way that it was able to pull out of debt and then become a viable, profitable company. Um, and through that transition, he started to take on more employees. I was the first one. Um, and it was a small team. He hired me on to help out with marketing because I bothered him constantly to bring me on to help him out with marketing. I just wanted to help. I just wanted to be a part of it. I loved everything that was going on. So, about halfway through 2021, he hired me on, and I started helping with social media and just providing some ideas for marketing. At the end of that year, a person that worked for the company was terminated. And when that person was terminated, there was a void that needed to be filled. And he made me, the previous owner, Jared, made me the president of the company. It was a funny conversation. I basically had something a contract that I'd worked out with one of our vendors, and it needed a signature on it, but it needed a company officer to sign it. And I was the marketing guy. Like that, I think that was my title, was like the marketing guy. So I text the owner and I was like, "Hey, Jared, can you sign this?" And he's like, "Why can't you sign?" And I explained it to him. He's like, "Okay, you're the president of the company now." And it was like that. It just switched. So yeah. So I did that for about a year and a half, and
The same way you got married, it sounds like.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's how my life happens. It's just split second decisions. Um, through the year and a half, I had been involved when I got out of the military. I got recruited by a defense contractor, and I worked in management, and I worked in a lot of different things. I worked under a great program manager, and I learned a lot about business, about um, you know, budgets, about just how to run a business at a large scale. Um, but small business was not something that I knew a lot about other than I got a business management degree, so I had a basic understanding of accounting and things like that. But I could build the hell out of a spreadsheet, right? Like I can get in Excel and do some damage. Um, so through that year and a half, I learned a tremendous amount from an amazing small business owner, and he taught me a lot and built the foundation and built rules that we have put into the company that will be rules for as long as this company exists. Just about how to, like, equity and competition, creating standards, just the things that keep people coming back, staying on schedule, whatever it might be. But basic fundamental building blocks that we started building the competition off of. Halfway through last year, I took over ownership of the company. Through a conversation, Jared was ready to retire. He's got 2 young kids that are, I say young, I think they're, we'll say maybe 13 and 10 now, or somewhere in that age range. Um, and he wanted to be a good dad and be a part of their lives, and this job requires you to be on the road a lot. I mean, a third of last year I was on the road and our team was on the road, so he wanted to be a part of it, and understood that it was his time and that somebody at the helm of the company needed to be involved all the time, needed to be there, needed to be, kind of become more forward facing. So I took over that responsibility and that role, and since then we've been trucking along and growing in popularity and growing around the world, which has been awesome. It's always been cool to see more people finding out about us in the US, but now understanding that there's huge demand in Europe, and we're going to Europe next year. And now we're working with South Africa to try to get some things going in 2026 in South Africa. It seems like Asia is going to come up in 2026 as well. So really expanding this company to an international entity, which is very, very exciting. Um, getting more competitors out there, getting spreading awareness, doing the things that we can to make the sport still look interesting, to make it so our competitors enjoy it. You know, that's one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we get is we evolve. Every match is different. So if you go to a match in our first match of the year is Sierra Vista, Arizona. If you go to that match and you compete in it, it's going to be completely different than the match in Holt, Florida, which is the second match of the year. So you could come to literally every single one of our competitions in the year, and it's going to be different. And that's been fun. It's been fun to use my creativity to apply it to those kind of things and build up the team underneath me to help them start to understand and allow them to flourish and see filling in their roles and you know growing the organization as a whole has been it's been very very rewarding and very fun for me.
I'd imagine, part of your role has probably been focused on, like, monetization. I would imagine there's, like, entry fees, audience tickets, things like that. Has that been a part of it, and do you have other competitors that you're competing with, or are you standalone in this market?
Yeah, so one of the things, especially with the economy being as tough as it has been for the past couple of years, is stabilizing our entry fees. We want people to be able to know and understand what they're getting, to feel value in it. The value proposition for our product is the most important thing to me. I want people to know that you know our entry fee is $386, which I feel is competitive with other 2-day events in all like you know whether it's a CrossFit competition or high rocks or whatever it might be. I think we're in a sweet spot there. I want people to feel like they got their money's worth when they come out and spend a weekend with us because I know it's not just the entry fee, it's the travel, it's the ammunition, it's everything else that's involved in it. Um, so we search for other ways to create income out of our sport. We don't charge for spectatorship because I feel like building that atmosphere is incredibly important to our athletes and our competitors. Um, our national championship this past weekend, we had our final event underneath the lights. So it was just the top 5 men's elite, which is our highest division as far as weights go, and the women's elite. We had them face off, and we go 5 competitors at a time. So super high energy. I'd say we probably had 2 or 300 spectators out there at 6:30 on a Sunday night. They stuck around. You know, I think we probably had like 2,000 spectators come through on the weekend, maybe a little bit more than that. But couple hundred of them stuck by and watched this final event and cheered people on. So I want to build that atmosphere. So monetizing that hasn't been something that we've done yet. Maybe as we grow a little bit bigger and we have a better value proposition for spectatorship, then that's something that we'll charge more money for. But other than that, it's finding partners in the industry that understand what we're trying to do, the community that we're trying to build, and the ones that are interested in supporting it. So sponsorship is a big part of it. Under Armour is obviously, like you alluded to earlier, a major sponsor of ours. They're our title sponsor. Um, They've been incredible. I think people were absolutely shocked that Under Armour would jump in and support a company that's two-way facing, specifically as two-way facing as we are. They've been involved in assisting law enforcement and a bunch of different special operations units for a long time. So it was always kind of just in the background, but it's good to see now that they're getting more forward facing with it and they're becoming more outwardly supportive of it. We have a ton of great sponsors that have helped us out throughout the years and that help keep that entry costs low, but also help us in growing our ability to market and expand to a larger audience.
Hey guys, as someone who prioritizes fitness and well being, I know how valuable it is to have a supplement and training plan that works for your body type and your genetics. We now live in a time where we can optimize our health and nutrition based on our own unique DNA. That's why I'm excited to partner with the DNA company. Their DNA test goes beyond standard genetic testing. They provide custom recommendations for diet, exercise, mental health, and lifestyle. Plus, they offer specialized tests like multi cancer early detection screening, which can identify cancer through a simple blood draw. If you're like me and want to take control of your health, don't miss this opportunity. Use my link, thednacompany.com/jalders to unlock exclusive discounts and special promotions. Discover what your DNA can reveal about your best life. thednacompany.com/jalders. Can you walk me through what the competition looks like, maybe the different segments of it for people listening or watching? You
Yeah.
know, you said people come in from CrossFits. I know there's like a physical lifting things, carrying things aspect to it. Can you walk people through what the different types of competitions are?
Yeah, for sure. So, competition weekend for one of our regional events. As I talked about earlier, we have a bunch of different divisions, mostly individual, but we do have team divisions as well. So, if you and a buddy want to come out and try it for the first time, it's way easier to do it for your first time if you've got somebody with you than if you're just going to be out underneath that spotlight by yourself. So, um, it's a 2-day competition. We'll run 7 stages over those 2 days, so 7 different events, if you like to call it that. We'll do 4 on Saturday and then 3 on Sunday. So regardless of what division you're in, you'll roll through 4 different stages on Saturday and 3 on Sunday. One of the things we do is some type of long movement traditionally, so it'll be a run. We've done as low as a mile, but with an incline and a grade that I've not seen anywhere in the US besides this one specific place that we were able to do it, and then all the way up to 6 miles. 6 miles would be unloaded in most cases. So you're really just, we're testing people's ability to move through space. Um, there will generally be at least one heavy event. That heavy event could be heavy farmer's carries or could be a heavy sandbag, something like that. And you're going to be required to move it multiple times. In that movement, there will be firing sequences. So, well, I'll give you an example from one of our events last weekend for men's elite. The stage was called Oof, and I'll tell you why in a second. Um, so, a 250-pound sandbag. You have to move it over a bar that's at 46 inches 4 times, and you need to complete 3 rope climbs. And then after you've completed that work, you go to the firing line and you shoot. These stages, that it would be 4 rounds of that, with the shooting sequences in between. The shooting sequences would be a restricted load count of, we'll say, like 4 by 12 in your rifle and 4 by 12 in your pistol. So you'll shoot 12 rounds out of your rifle and then transition to pistol and then shoot 12 rounds out of your pistol. In this stage, it was for time. So you had a 15-minute time cap. Whatever time you finished is your raw time. And then any miss that you had on paper adds 10 seconds onto your time. So if you have 10 misses, you get 100 seconds added onto your time, which is a pretty significant penalty and something that might last 10 minutes. That's an additional 10%. Or I guess it would be more than that. But that adds an additional penalty onto your score. We also do point stages where everything that you do earns you a point. So every scored hit will earn you a point, and then every physical activity that you take on will earn points as well. Um, we'll do some physical only challenges every once in a while. So we've done sprint obstacle courses, we've done max distance sled drags, we've done um, weaves through things. We've done a bunch of different tests, obstacle course races, you name it. If the range has it, we'll bring it in, we'll incorporate it.
Are there like
No, we
as you're running, are there like targets popping up on the hills and stuff?
no, no, we
See that so bad. That'd be fun, like running. "Ah."
that's our sniper challenge, which we do once a year. Our sniper challenge is much more like that. The issue with run and guns when you get to the scale that we are, like 300 people, it's very tough to stay on schedule. And schedule and safety are the 2 most important things that we have in our sport. The easiest way to ruin somebody's weekend is to tell them they're going to do something at 1 o'clock and then not do it till 3 o'clock or not do it till 5 o'clock. Right? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, or somebody being unsafe.
Such a
Like,
bummer, yeah.
yeah. So much of our demographic, they make a living in risky situations, right? They're kicking down doors, they're serving warrants, they're doing whatever they need to do. Um, I would hate for somebody not to make it home doing something that they want to do on the side, when they risk their lives every single day doing something so dangerous. So safety is paramount. We do things a little bit unconventionally when it comes to safety, but with compared to some of the other shooting sports to ensure safety is paramount in our sport. So like we don't ever have hot weapons when we're moving around the range. We use chamber flags, which a lot of other shooting sports do that as well. We do our best to ensure that anytime somebody is firing, they're on the firing line, and as soon as they're off the firing line, before they're able to leave, their weapon's been inspected and cleared. So that way, when they're doing the fitness, there's no element of, oh, a gun's accidentally going to go off.
Mhm. I'm wondering, as you're talking about this, I picture all these, like, wild ideas in my head, like, I would love to see this as, like, a reality show, we could like a Survivor type thing. I'm wondering, like, how big can this scale? Like, is there a path for some aspect of this to be streamlined down to be I can't think of a good analogy, but some version of like a UFC or like Olympics or some kind of major thing where some elements of this are streamlined to have a major league, like a UFC type scenario where it's huge and people are doing
Yeah.
certain things. Is there a way to streamline that sort of scaling?
that's what I think about every single day is a way to make the sport bigger, to grow it, to grow exposure. And yes, there's a path, and the path is getting it in front of a larger audience. Much like CrossFit, the big breakout for CrossFit was when they got onto ESPN. The big breakout for UFC was the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Or I'm sorry, that was the Contender Series where they were going in, and I cannot remember the name of it.
Big Hoist Gracie
But
UFC with antagonist right there, right? Like,
well, so I mean, the idea behind it was like what made the sport grow. Getting on betting sites was a big thing for UFC. Getting public visibility was a big thing for UFC. Getting buy-in for who the competitors in UFC was and telling the story about who their competitors were. Then people have a personal connection to the competitors in the sport. So all of those things are all part of the formula. But the most important thing is putting on a really great event that people want to come back to and that you find challenging, visually stimulating, and then also something that people are also willing to tune into. So spectatorship is a big part of it. And if it looks cool and it's fun and people are having fun doing it, then people want to watch it. So that's our path to success is the best possible competitions we can put on.
is there a version of this where it's almost like the closest you can get to Navy SEAL boot camp as possible, or just like running people down to the raw, the most tired you could possibly be, like 72 hours straight, freezing? Is there a version of that where you could push it to the extreme, or is that just a wild fantasy I have?
I mean, it's like there are other people that are out there doing that, that put on, SEAL Fit, and there's companies out there that do that. I don't necessarily have the desire to torture people into submission. Instead, I'd rather them enjoy themselves when they're out there and still push themselves and make it physically hard. But um, if something's breaking you down to that point, it's very tough to train and do it every single day. Instead, I'd rather people focus on health and wellness and longevity in the sport and train at a rate that's going to allow them to continue to do it for a very long time. I think that's one of the issues that I've taken with CrossFit competition specifically, not the training modality. I think the training modality is excellent, but instead with competition is that in order to excel at it, you need to put your body into a very, very dangerous place through training because it's so much volume. There's just so much to do in order to achieve that level. Um, it's not, I won't say it's easy by any means to train in our sport to get to that top level. It's doable, it's possible. And you can do it with keeping your body safe and healthy as well, which is a very, very big, important thing for me. I don't care about creating somebody that can run a 5 minute mile, can deadlift 500 pounds, and can back squat 500 pounds. I'd rather create a person that can ruck for 20 miles and that can drag a body out of harm's way and can use their body to do anything that it might be called upon to do. That's within relative reason, and I think that we're able to create that with our test of fitness.
I think I'm probably listening to this in a similar capacity as a lot of people, where maybe I'm a recreational hobbyist when it comes to going to the range with my bros. Maybe someone's listening like myself, and I'm like, that sounds really fun. I could see making a weekend out of this with my friends. What would the training approach look like? I'm sure there's got to be a standardization of weapon. So maybe talk about which weapons are used and which ones people should train in, because I'm sure it's standardized. And what does that physical training and tactical training look like to make yourself ready for this? And just as a side note, how do people afford it with the price of ammo?
Yeah, great question. So as far as the firearms go, we don't have any standardization. We do have rules, specific limitations for firearms. So instead of creating a standard class, what we've done is limit some of the things that we know people can use to gamify it, and to create a level playing field. So right now, the way our rule set exists, you can come in with a $600 Glock, a $200 optic on top of the Glock, and a $600 PSA rifle, and then maybe a $300 optic on top of that, and then you'll be able to be competitive so long as you have an awareness and understanding of how that firearm is going to operate. Part of that does come through live fire out on the range, but I'll say our top competitors, for the time that they spend dry firing versus the time that they spend on the range, I would say for every one range session, they're probably doing 20 to 30 dry fire sessions, which greatly reduces the cost. Because you're right, ammunition is expensive. A lot of it too is having structure when you do go to live fire. So when you go to the range, understanding, hey, I've got this drill that I'm going to run, and here's what I'm trying to work on, instead of, hey, I've got, a bunch of fully loaded magazines. I'm just going to pop rounds on steel at 50 yards, and because I like to make the noise. Um, Getting better is always done with intention, and the best way to do that is through coaching. And this is not meant to be a shameless plug, because there's many of other ways to do it out there, but we do have an online training program for dry fire, which is $20 a month, which is what a box of 9 millimeter costs. So you can get a month's worth
Is
of
that
training that's
using, like,
updated.
the little laser bullet? Is that what you
No, you don't even
dry fire, no?
really don't even need to do that. Now that you have lasers on top of your pistols specifically, you can see so much when you're actually going through a dry fire about where your firearm or your optics dipping when you're pulling on the trigger. Specifically, if you're aiming at, like, they sell little cardboard targets. Me personally, I've got Post-it notes torn into little, like, inch by inch squares that I use for dry fire. A lot of it too is just understanding where your trigger breaks. Um, and same thing with a rifle, building positions. So, getting behind a chair and just understanding, if I'm behind this chair, what's the best place for me to go where I can see my optic, where I've got good eye relief, where I'm stable, because you're going to be out of breath when you do it on the line in the tactical game. So, building that muscle memory of knowing how you're going to get in and out of those positions. Just like a pistol, or just like a rifle, you need to build a dope card. So you need to understand data on previous oh my gosh, I can't. Anyways, you build your dope card, or dope chart, and understanding that when I pull the trigger at 200 yards, where is my bullet gonna impact? Knowing that I pulled a good shot. At 300 yards, where is it gonna impact? At 400 yards, where is it gonna impact? Intermediate yardages between those. And again, instead of just going out there and just pulling a trigger at just random things, you can do so much more through dry fire and understanding positional shooting, breaking a trigger, seeing where your optic goes, seeing what your rifle does when you do it, that you don't need to expel that ammunition. So, those range days where you go and you use 1,000 rounds, they're really, you're doing it more for fun than you are for training. The physical side of the house, we do have a training program as well. And it is high intensity training. It's hit training. A lot of focus on carries, a lot of focus on grunt work, a lot of focus on, things burdened, underweight, moving on ergs. Ergs is a big thing for power generation, zone 2 stuff. It's the things that are elements of our sport that we test that we feel are important. So, yeah, that's a good way to train. Another thing, man, strap a ruck on your back and just go walk around your neighborhood.
Mm.
Do it with your family. If you've got put your kids in the stroller, go out there and just put a ruck on 'em and stroll around, or take a hike. If you've got like, here, I live out just outside of Austin, we've got like a 4 mile hike that we do every Sunday, and it's probably got 700 or 800 stairs on it. Just going out there and doing something like that, after it gets easy, after you can do it in under, say, 40 minutes, throw a ruck on and then see how you perform under those same things. There's a lot to be said for just doing push-ups on the front lawn and doing sit-ups and just getting your body moving. You want to go into a CrossFit gym, go into a CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
What we really care about is just people getting out there and getting interested in fitness. I would say group fitness helps because you find a tribe, you find people that are also interested, that'll hold you accountable. So if you find an issue with, like, hey, I commit to things and then I back down pretty quickly, it's always really helpful to just find somebody else that will do it with you. And CrossFit's always been great about that, or any other. I mean, if you want to go into an F45 or whatever it might be, just something that challenges your body and has it moving. There's Strength programs are great, so long as they include some level of cardiovascular work as well.
I want you to get a little more nerdy with the, firearms training, especially the dry shooting. So I have, like, on mine, I have, like, a laser bullet, which I use with, like, an app.
Yep,
It's definitely fun. I have heard, just to get on the nerdy side, that if you're especially using, like, a striker-fired weapon, that it could actually damage the mechanism if you're pulling the trigger when it's empty.
yep.
I think that's true, so I'd love for you to touch upon that, but I also would love to know, like, going to the range obviously makes sense how to train, but if you're training, like, long distance with, like, a long gun, how does the average Joe learn how to shoot like a long gun, like a rifle of some sort long distance? Because going to the range at 25 yards is not the most exciting thing, and you're not learning about gravity and about wind and all the different things that I personally don't know anything about because I've never shot distance before. How does someone train with that and talk about the dry firing protocol and what that looks like? I know you said the sticky notes and the laser, but how does that work?
Yeah, so the most simple thing that you can do for dry firing is having a pistol that you've checked and made sure is clear, remove the feed source from it, remove your magazine, and then it's as simple as pulling your trigger till you hit a wall
Okay.
and then putting constant pressure on it until it breaks. And that builds a muscle memory so you know when you're breaking a trigger what's supposed to be happening in your hands. Another thing that I used to do was in between sets, I built a gym in my garage. I understand in Globo gyms this probably isn't going to happen, but I would get off and if I have a 2-minute rest period in between a lifting set, I'd strap my belt on, I would draw my pistol, I would get a focus to something on the wall. I would bring my sights up to that focus line and I would pull the trigger and ensure that my front sight and rear sight were aligned and that whenever I was pulling the trigger, it wasn't dipping off. So if you have a laser and you're doing that and you're aiming at a post-it note, you're trying to see that it's hitting exactly on the post-it note where you're telling it to hit. So it doesn't need to be anything more than that.
Okay.
Our dry fire program gets a little bit more in depth and it'll be working on draw. So drawing from the holster, it'll be working on reloads, because moving and reloading is a thing that people in competition work on pretty often. Um, it's so multifaceted. Ben Stager, you can get online, you can spend like $15 on one of his books, and he'll have hundreds of drills in each one of those books about building specific parts of shooting a pistol and how to become more proficient. Like when I go to the range, I work on dot torture is something that I do. I do a lot of single hand shooting, and I'll do dot torture. It's very simple. I've got a 100 round drill that I do. I can get in and out in about 20 minutes and I've worked on what I need to do that day. Um, so there's a bunch of different approaches to it, and if you were to ask 10 different firearms instructors how they approach dry fire, they would tell you something different. I've also heard that that dry firing a pistol, striker fire, hammer fired either way, without it actually doing something can cause issues. I've never experienced that personally. I'm sure that there's a bunch of people out there that will tell you it's absolutely the worst thing that you can possibly do for your pistol. I will tell you that I have some beautiful pistols that I've been doing it with for 2 years, 3 years, and have never experienced mechanical failure because of it. So um, I think the worst thing that you can do with any tool that you purchase is not use it. So instead, I would prefer people to go out and dry fire until it breaks, and then you've gotten good use out of it. In my opinion, you've at least built a tangible skill out of it. So yeah, I wouldn't be super concerned about damaging something with dry fire. When it comes to long range, um, finding a range that actually has the ability to do it, to allow you to go and shoot out to distance is very important. Ballistic calculators are a big thing. Chronos are a big thing. So basically, you build a rifle. Every rifle is going to be different. Every ammunition that you put into it is going to cause something different to happen when you pull the trigger. We always know it's going to come out of the barrel. So long as it's good ammunition, it's going to fire down range. Now, where exactly that lands is based on, the load that's inside of it, the bullet that's being used for it. So, I just got off the phone with Sierra. Sierra makes one of the best bullets that's out there in the market. That bullet's going to fly differently than another PMC bullet. Like they're all going to fly a little bit differently based on their shape and their trajectory, or not their trajectory, but their ballistics of the actual round. So um, when it comes to long range and dry fire and just getting used to a weapon, I would definitely try to seek instruction first. Um, the problem with instruction, just like anything else, is you have people that are great at it and people that are absolute dog shit at it. And you can't tell that from like somebody's personal Instagram page whether they're good or not. Well, I definitely have instructors that I recommend personally, and I think that a lot of people that you would meet would do the same. Every range is going to provide you a little bit different, and just like anything else, when there's not like a book of this is exactly how this happens, this is exactly what happens every time you do this thing. Everybody's got their own personal opinions, and they are pretty strong about them. So sometimes they can sway you or dissuade you from believing in a certain thing, just like how dry firing can damage weapons. Um, you have to you you have to find a trusted source. And again, there's not like a book or there's not like a website that you can go to where it's like, is this a trusted source? So I would say do your research. Just because somebody has a qualification of they were in the military or they're in special operations or whatever it might have been, they can be very good at their job, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be transferable to what you're trying to do. I know a ton of I know a ton of Green Berets, for example. I know a ton of guys that have served in top tier military units in this country, that have protected our freedom, that have given a ton of personal sacrifices to do it, that I would kick the shit out of in a shooting competition. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to go in and clear a building or do anything else that they are capable of doing. But when it comes to shooting fast or shooting accurately, like I can beat up on them in that. So, just because somebody wore a certain uniform does not mean necessarily that they're going to be a great firearms instructor. In that same vein, there are tons of guys that have worn uniforms that are excellent firearms instructors. So don't use that as your only guiding test for that. If you know somebody that's taken a course before, or if they offer reviews, that's always a good thing. So if there is a firearms instructor out there that you can go and you can actually see reviews that have been done about their courses, um, that means that they're a good enough instructor that they're willing to put reviews out there to the public. And that's the kind of person that I would trust for that.
My wife just got me the new Insta360 X4, and I'm hooked. I just took it on a snowboarding trip with my family, and the footage is insane. It's like a drone was following us. And the selfie stick, yeah, it's invisible. Total game changer. And right now they're having a big sale and even offering free gifts with a purchase. You can check out my affiliate link. It costs nothing to you, but it does help me out if you make a purchase. Check out jalders.com/x4 for the latest offers, or visit insta360.com and use my code INRR6JU. That's code INRR6JU. I'll have it down in the show notes too. You had mentioned a couple times earlier how, it is difficult being a 2A facing company, someone that's pro Second Amendment, dealing with a lot of public narratives and whatnot. For people listening that are still either on the fence or think that this is crazy, playing devil's advocate now, based on conversations we've all had, people understandably are very concerned about school shootings. They don't want to live in the Wild West with everyone carrying weapons, especially in states where that's not common. I know in Texas it is. Um, how do you talk to people like that? How do you shift the mindset, and what are some of your solutions? Because there are a lot of actual real problems within the culture. We could all point fingers at different reasons why, but I'm just thinking about my past weekend experience with one of my friends who's definitely more on the anti-gun side. I had to have these conversations with him, and that's a lot of people. And until you really get involved with education or just talking to people like you, are a very common sense, very normal guy, you don't always realize that it's not all lunatic nut jobs with wearing camouflage all the time. It's just normal people. But I do like see the other side. I'm a dad. I don't want anything to happen to children ever. So I'm very concerned about that. And I do see the argument of not wanting everywhere you go someone wearing a weapon that could kill you. How do you address those very common issues, which I'm sure are also a stumbling block to marketing to more people, is getting over those obstacles?
Yeah, for me, it's common sense, right? So with anything in the world, we apply common sense to it. One of my largest frustrations in America is our judicial system. So if you think about for a school shooting, which is unfortunate as they have happened, and if we could eradicate them completely, it would be incredible. And I hope that there's some way that we can figure out how to make that never happen again. I think it happens more uh, on the family side, the mental health side, than it does on the eradication of firearms side. That's like you're not fixing a root cause. You're stopping a problem. You're attempting to solve a problem by taking away a tool, an intermediary, instead of getting to the root problem. For example, and this is if somebody goes out and gets into an automobile accident because they were driving drunk, um, they don't blame the alcohol. They don't blame, every once in a while, the bartender or the bar or the establishment that they were served at might go after and get sued, but it wasn't ever the alcohol's fault. And rightfully so, the person made a conscious decision to go out and take that action and to do those things, and they put other people's lives on the line doing that. Same thing exists with heart disease, right? We don't ban specific foods that make people fat. We're not getting rid of trans fats or things that are causing coronary issues across America that are damaging way more people. And again, it goes back to education. If we could educate more people about how unhealthy these specific foods are, or start to, just give people a better understanding of it. Firearms are another thing. It- there is something to be said about having somebody in your life that is willing to take you to the range and teach you about firearms, teach you about how to properly use them, teach you about what happens if you do not use this thing properly. An appreciation for life, an appreciation for human life. All of these things come from community and the people that are around you, where you grow up, and the people that raise you. It seems so often we're so quick to blame a thing because it's something we know we can point at, and like that's the problem right there. It's that rifle that has a clip in it, and it's just killing everybody that it gets pointed at. When in actuality, it's like rifles are not, uh, they're capable tools, but it's not a death machine. It needs to be the person that pulls the trigger needs to be the one that's trying to do the harm. They're not just going to go out and kill somebody by themselves. It's the person behind it that's really the issue. And um, I don't have a great fully, full answer. Because if I did, I'd be doing everything that I could to enact it. I would be out there screaming from the rooftop about how to stop people from hurting one another. The best case and the best way that I can figure out how to do it is by um, getting getting involved in a community locally, getting involved in health and wellness locally, encouraging your children to go out and do things that are physical activities, encouraging young people to go out there and to interact with one another. I think we've become so reclusive, and the internet's probably made a major impact on that. Of like, we don't go out and actually do anything. Instead, we find a hive that we can agree with on the internet, and then we just run down that rabbit hole, and it radicalizes people in a lot of different ways instead of interacting with people in your local community, instead of getting involved, instead of getting involved in sports or getting involved in art or whatever it might be, just finding a creative outlet. That's what I would say is probably a more healthy, long-standing solution that will make radical changes in our country, as opposed to just banning assault weapons, which is honestly, most people that call for banning assault weapons don't actually understand what they are. Even when it comes to magazine capacity, it's something that people don't necessarily understand what it is, or what they're actually saying. And I've found that, just as you said with your friend, education, spending time with other people that are opposed to firearms, that solves a lot of those. And I don't say solves. That breaks down a lot of those barriers, encourages conversations, and as long as we can encourage conversation and continue to talk about it, then I think we're on the right path.
It was interesting talking to my friend Dan. What's up, Dan? He, was talking about assault weapons, and he didn't really have, like most people, didn't really have a definition of what that is. And he
Yeah.
started describing it. I'm like, you're describing like a fully automatic machine gun, which you can't just go into a store and get that. And it is funny when you know that, but also I'm like, wow, okay, I understand where you're coming from. Because if you think you can walk into your local gun shop and buy a fully automatic M16, you can't. And then after we were done shooting, we had a good time. And I was like, do you realize that the handgun you were firing is the same rate of fire that, an AR would have typically?
Yes.
Just click, bang, click, bang, click, bang. You're not pulling the trigger and going crazy like a video game. And he didn't realize that. And I think that comes down to a lot of it is just not realizing, some of the narratives you hear are not always true. And the idea of eliminating fully automatic machine guns and tanks, I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, I don't really want people rolling down the street in a tank. I think there's a line in the sand. I know some people don't think there's a line in the sand. Um, but yeah, just education. And I think what you're talking about is just having a good time with your friends in a safe way, feeding into the competitive nature that we all have, and just having a fun time. That sounds like okay to me.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny that you like machine guns. It's definitely something that like is regulated by the ATF. People don't understand what NFA items are, for example. They don't have that knowledge. One of the things that I like to do is I'll take a handguard off of a rifle. Have you ever seen a modern day sporting rifle with a handguard removed?
Hmm.
They
Not
are
not with the
completely.
no.
Well, so if you take a handguard off and just expose the barrel, they're not intimidating at all.
I mean,
So
like
I
the
call it
part like on like an M16, the whole handle kinda thing? Is
so
that
not your carry handle, but
okay?
the forward part of where the rail, so, like, where your forehand would go if you were holding onto an AR. It's just the barrel then, and they look ridiculous with that handguard removed, and they don't look intimidating at all. And if you show that to somebody and you say, "Do you think this is a deadly weapon?" They're like, "Well, no, that's just a rifle." And then you all of a sudden you put the handguard on it, and then they're like, "No, this is the worst thing ever that's ever existed." So it's education is very, very important. I do think having the right people involved in the ATF would help with education instead of complete. It's like when we were growing up, one of the biggest things. I assume we're around the same age. I'm 38.
I'm older than you, and I'm not gonna say it.
Okay, okay, all right. So,
Yeah, I'm 51 actually.
Jesus, you look great for 51.
Thanks, man.
I was gonna say like late 30s, early 40s. That's awesome.
Dude.
Um,
My wife
when
years younger, so I think that keeps me young.
it keeps you young. Yeah, 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 yeah. When we were growing up, I remember the big conversation was sex, was abstinence, right? That was like everybody preached abstinence instead of sex education, right? Like, let's not just pretend that this thing doesn't exist and just like say it go away and nobody's having sex until they get married. Instead, let's educate people. Let's prepare them for the eventuality that this is going to happen and give them real life experience. Like, hey, here's how you put on a condom on a banana. Now you've seen this actually happen. Hey, here's what a pistol does. Here's how it operates. Here's what a semi-automatic pistol is. Here's how it operates. It's the same principle. You prepare people with knowledge instead of just scaring them with scary tactics, which unfortunately is what a lot of people do. They use division and fear to create a narrative that then, gets people to tune in and a bunch of different things. I won't go down that
Eh,
that
you
route.
know, it's understandable, and, like, before I started getting educated, before started going to ranges with my friends, it's understandable to not realize how things are, I mean, there are a lot of misconceptions, and I get it, you know? So, I think that is important to just kinda figure things out. I think the thing that really flipped the switch for me and my understanding is the idea of having 0 guns in the entire world. There's something even, as someone who enjoys going with my friends, the idea of, like, no one being able to kill each other with weapons, that seems great, but it's just not reality. If the government or whoever said, "I'm taking all your guns away," the people that will give up their guns are the good guys, the people that follow
Yep.
the laws, and the idea of being un uh, unable to defend your family because the bad guys didn't return back their guns, they didn't hand them in, that's not okay with me. And the thing that really flipped my brain into first owning is during COVID, seeing the world on fire and seeing all the crazy riots, and I'm like, "I need
Yeah.
to be able to protect my children," and I think that's the kind of thing that people have to cope with. There's just a reality of how things are. We have more guns than people, and whether you like guns or not, they're not going away. There's just no way around it.
Right. And as much as people would like to see a world with no guns where nobody kills each other, I would love to see a world where everybody has guns and nobody kills each other, right? So like we work out our problems in a different way and understanding that like this is a tool to protect us from tyranny more than anything, right? That's why the Second Amendment was written. And I know people like that. There's this. You always heard, well, how's an AR going to fight the United States Army? Well, look at Afghanistan. Look at every other battle that's been fought over the past 20 years. It is possible. The will of the people, is we've lost a lot of the conflicts that we've gotten into over the past shit. We can go back 50 years now, including Vietnam. Um, Firepower doesn't necessarily make the end result, right? So our ability to protect ourselves from our families and ourselves from not only evildoers, but also from a tyrannical government is incredibly important. Um, I spent a lot of time in Australia, where they have removed firearms from almost every citizen over there. And twice that I was over there, terrorist attacks happened. Now, smaller scale terrorist attacks, but they're still capable of happening. They just execute them in a different way. It's one of them happened a block away from my hotel when I was in my hotel room. It is completely possible for things to happen regardless of removing
Yeah.
that firearm from civilian ownership. So not something that I advocate for at all.
I think it's the same with the school shooting situation. Like, it doesn't sound good to describe the solution that I think would make sense, like having armed guards and having like multiple layers of doors and having security protocols and having, you know, either teachers or staff or security that are fully trained with an ability to defend. I could understand people hearing that and be like, I don't want my kids to go to school in like a military zone. Metal detectors, like that sounds like barbaric and crazy, but I want my kids to be at least as safe as going to a Yankees game, you know? don't think that's too much to ask for, and it's like, whether you like it or not, we don't live in speaking of the, the Eddie Haskell reference, we don't live in Leave It to Beaverland anymore,
Right.
for better or worse, and so you have to face reality. Do I want to have certain aesthetic to certain public spaces? I wish it was more like, the '50s or whatever, like, at least visually or aesthetically walking in, everyone's like, "Hey, Chuck, how you doing, Mary?" The But that's just not how it is. We have certain risks, and you have to, take measures to keep our kids and families safe.
Well, the thing that has always shocked me about that was people being against teachers having firearms, which, you can argue back and forth about that all day, is you are going to trust a person to generate the knowledge base that your child has. You are entrusting your child to them on a daily basis, that they're preparing them for the future, right? You're giving them the tools to go out and be good American citizens, but you won't empower that person by giving them a firearm to be able to protect those children. To me, it seems kind of asinine that like your child's future is being built by by these people, but you're not allowing them to protect them, should they so want to. Right? I'm not saying you should arm every single teacher and it needs to happen and it's the only way, but definitely if the teachers go through a course and are properly trained and they could do so, that could be standardized across the United States. Have a firearms instructor class for teachers specifically. Tactical Games actually offered our training to any teachers that wanted to go through it a couple of years ago for free, as a response to some of the school shootings that happened, so that teachers were capable and understood how to operate firearms because, of course, the students are scared, but imagine being a teacher that's responsible for that. You're the adult in the room. Now, if something does happen, you're the one that needs to respond to it because you want to protect the lives of all the children that are there. You didn't dedicate your life to poverty and and everything that they've done, and the sacrifices that teachers make. To then ultimately, like it just seems like a shitty situation. So anything that we can do to help teachers, we've always done.
Nick, I'm curious, and we'll wrap up in a few. I know your time is valuable, so thank you for sticking with me this long. I'm curious, from a business side of things, have you thought of like a franchise type model where you have maybe different chapters of the tactical games? Is there anything like that in place, or is that something that's coming?
Yeah, no, no. So it's something that we definitely have. So now we do it with our shooting competitions. We have what's called our skirmish program. So instead of a 2-day competition, skirmish is a 1-day competition. It's two shooting only courses and two fitness and shooting courses. Um, they're put on in 4 different locations now. We'll be expanding, I think, hopefully to 10 by the end of 2025, if not more. And it's a more accessible, lower price point, easier to do because there's less travel, and there's one of them happening in these locations basically every month. The current locations are Ohio, Idaho, Arizona, and here in Texas.
Okay.
So we're going to be expanding into a couple more states next year that we know for sure. And again, looking to have about 10 of them. We're also launching our affiliate program here January 1. So the affiliate program is really for gyms that are out there that are looking to find programming that's going to encourage people to do something different than what they've been doing before. So, for example, like High Rocks. High Rocks is a big growing sport right now that a lot of CrossFit gyms have the ability to use their programming, to use their affiliate model in order to program specifically for High Rocks for athletes to go and eventually compete in that. The
Mm.
idea would be the same for the tactical games. So changing programming in the gym to lend more towards competition in the tactical games than competition in the sport of CrossFit, which a lot of affiliates now they program specifically for the sport of CrossFit instead of something else. So what we want to do is encourage them to program for the sport of the tactical games, which we do believe leads to better longevity. You're still pushing yourself, you're still gonna sweat, you're still gonna have your friends, but it's definitely gonna be more strength and accessory focused with a Metcon just being something that you do in order to get your heart rate up that day.
Awesome. Nick, thank you so much for being here. I know you wanted to talk about the 2025 schedule, and if there's anything else that you want to bring up or tell everyone, like, please do so.
Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna be heading all over America next year. I'd love for people to go and take a look at our www.thetacticalgames.com. On there, you'll find our 2025 competition schedule. You'll see we're touching a lot of places on the East Coast, West Coast, Northeast, Northwest. We'll definitely be in the Southwest a bit and the Southeast too. We get to the Midwest, we get to all the Rust Belt. If you guys are interested and you want to learn more about our competitions, at the Tactical Games on Instagram is a great resource, and our YouTube is an excellent resource as well. We have a ton of our stages from our national championship up on our YouTube. So if you just kind of want to see what it looks like and see what a competition might be, that's a great way to do it. And you'll see that we have great representation on there of our masters 50 plus competitors, of our women's 40 plus competitors, of our women's elite field, of our men's elite field. So you can get an idea of what the different levels are. We have plenty of competitors out there that are in their 60s in our sport. We have a few competitors that are in their teens that compete in our sport. So it really is, it's for everybody, and anybody that's interested, please reach out. And if you have any questions or there's any issues or topics that you'd like to discuss further, please reach out to us at the Tactical Games on Instagram. Is a great way to get a hold.
It's awesome, Nick. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been insightful and awesome to hear about how you were running things and the journey that you've been on. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Jay. I appreciate it. And thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, man. We hit stop. We are off. Dude, that was great, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'll try to get this out in the next couple weeks. I hope I hit upon stuff that, your fans and followers will find interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Definitely keep in touch, man. If you make it out to Jersey, let me know. I'm right on the beach. We can go hit a skate park or go surf or something.
I like it. Yeah. We're going to be up in, how far away from New Hampshire?
Pretty damn far, about probably 4
Are
hours.
you Southern Jersey?
No, I'm like smack in the middle of Jersey. I'm like 1 hour
Oh,
from New
okay.
York and like 1 hour and 10 minutes from Philly. So I'm kind of like near a lot of major stuff, but I'm a mile from the beach. So we're like in a cool little beach town.
I got you. I went to boot camp in Cape May, so I know Southern New Jersey very well.
Okay, that's cool, man. Awesome, bro.
Yeah. I
How's
love it very much.
how's Austin, by the way? I've never been, and it
Austin's
seems like you're just stumbling upon like Joe Rogan and podcasters and strip clubs and coffee shop and
it's a wild place, man. It's awesome. I love it here. I think we both love it here. There's tons to do. It for Texas is definitely the most green place that I've seen in Texas. Like there's a ton of outdoor activities to do here, which is awesome. Like it's a city with a lake that runs through, a river that runs through the middle of it, a lake right next to it, parks everywhere, a green belt that runs through it. So, my wife and I both love being outdoors. So there's tons of things for us to do outdoors here. The shooting community is awesome here. The art community is awesome here. The culinary scene's great. If you like comedy, there's not a better place in the country for
yeah,
comedy than
Joe
right now.
Rogan, right? Like, have you
So
been to
I went.
the place?
Oh, is Mothership? Yeah, yeah. So last time I was at Comedy Mothership, we were up, like outside of the green room. There's a VIP area, so we're sitting in the VIP area, and Ron White sat next to me, and then Roseanne sat next to him.
Yeah.
So I was sitting next to like these fucking comedy legends, and she was drunk as shit and got on stage and started talking. It was cool. It's really it's a very very cool place, and more and more people are moving here and understanding that this is going to be probably like I don't want to say like a revolution because I don't mean a change and like overthrowing of the government, but there's definitely seems to be a shift here towards what I would call normalcy. Just like people existing and coexisting regardless of color or race or religion, whatever. Like everybody's just here and wants to have a good time, enjoy themselves, raise their families well, and be involved in the community, which is something that I love and support.
That's cool to hear. I heard from friends that it kinda is like it got a little woke, but maybe I'm hearing things wrong. It's kind of like a mixture you're saying, or
Yeah, there's parts of it, but that's every major city, right? Like there's definitely it's also the capital. So whenever you're in a capital city and there's legislation, there's always going to be a very big population of opposing views.
yeah.
But that's okay, right? Like as long as people are willing to communicate and have conversations and not just like stiff arming one another from having an opinion, like there's nothing wrong with having people with different points of view.
Yeah.
Celebrating differences is what makes this country awesome. I think like we're trying too much to make everybody the same instead of just allowing people to be different and then accepting them for their differences.
They always bring good restaurants too, so it's all
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
Alright, brother, you get on with your day. I appreciate taking so much time. I'll let you know when this goes out, and, keep in touch, bro.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Thanks, Jay.
Later.
Bye.
I really hope that you enjoyed that episode. If you did, please take a moment, leave me a review on Spotify and Apple especially. It takes about only 30 to 40 seconds to leave a nice review. You can just click on the stars, you can say something nice. I really do read them all, and it really does mean a lot to me if you could just please do that. And also make sure you hit subscribe and share the episode, connect with me online, connect with our guests. You know, we love all the interaction, so please do so. Also, please check out my website, jalders.com. I am an artist, I'm a father, I'm a family man. I appreciate your support. I would love to get your eyeballs on my artwork. So, yes, keep sending messages. Let me know who you'd like to see on the show next, and I wish you an awesome rest of your day.